Hello everyone, this is Shamsi and welcome to my review of the 0.23 update of Dual Universe, the one that's caused such a strong emotional reaction from the community given the changes proposed to the industry systems in the game. So I thought that I should make this review to outline exactly what is coming as described in the patch notes and in JC's interview with NQ-Naerais, and also to chime in with my 2 cents on it all for those who are interested. Now there's a lot to unpack in this video, so we're going to jump straight into it, but quickly first, I would appreciate it if you enjoy this content and want to see more of it, if you would subscribe to this channel should you want to, and if you really like the content and want to see everything that I put out in my 1 or 2 releases for YouTube per week, then please also click the bell icon to receive notifications for when my content goes live. So, first thing, the industry update. Gone are the days when a solo player like me can, without a thought in the world, just craft a extra large military space engine, Tech 2, largest thing that can be found without even thinking about it. Because the system of industry is going to change, and now every single factory unit in the game, every one of these chemical industries, these smelters, everything is going to be given a container slot inside the item into which you're going to have to insert a schematic. Now schematics, you can buy as many of them as you want, so you can run as many units as you want, but you're going to have to buy one schematic for each of the industry units that you're going to run. So the way JC explained all of this in his interview with NQ-Naerais is saying, basically, I'm quoting him directly here when he said, many of you, when you get back into the game, in a sense, it'll be a different game. If you are into the industry, it's a different role, it's a different challenge, and the way you used to do things, it'll evolve now, and you have to find your new position into the system. He also did outline that this is not going to be the end of the process. He said it's not the end of it. We don't believe that by adding the schematic system there's going to be a magical fixing the markets. We know that there are other things that are necessary to have. Then step by step we're going to fill the whole picture. So while I'm explaining, do keep in mind that this is the start of the story and not the end of it. This is the start of how they're going to implement their industry. And you might rightly ask, well, why are they doing it in this order? The answer given to that by JC in his interview with NQ-Naerais is time constraints. And this is just my own guess, but I can also read in to that answer based on other things that JC has said previously about the shoestring nature of the budget, that it's time and money constraints here that made the implementation of the industry this way. In a way, you bring a minimum viable product out into the market and then you perfect it. So let's talk about how this is going to work. So I've already mentioned that each of these items of industry is going to need a schematic to run. I believe the exception to that is transfer units. Transfer units are still going to be able to function without schematics, which is good news for me and a lot of the players that I know in the game. So let's talk first about the cost of schematics. Now JC mentioned in his interview that there's going to be a formula, and he said, so tier 1, simple things, for instance my base level of production here with refinery, simple tier 1 things, he said, are accessible with your daily reward. He said, we sort of think in terms of number of days with 100,000 quanta you get every day as a logging reward. So if you want a very basic industry, you should be able to get that straight away. It's not a big deal. He then also said that the largest of the gigafactories in the game, so the biggest organizations with the biggest factory, he quoted a figure of 150 billion quanta to bring those industries back online after the update. So by way of example, let's consider this recipe here. He said, if you want to make tier 5 XL things from scratch with everything in between, then it's going to cost billions and billions and billions, and we think that that's fair. So if you want a basic industry, that's very accessible. If you want to create the highest end produced goods in the game, that's going to cost you billions. Now that thing I said, tier 5, keep that in mind. We're going to come back to that in a moment. So JC's rationale is, imagine if the system that he's proposing was the system that was in the game at the start, and then the game reverted to the system we have now. There would be an enormous outcry that the industry is being made too easy and not sufficiently rewarding for those who put in the investment. And so again, the example he uses is if you want to buy a phone or if you want to buy a car, you wouldn't go and build a factory and make your own phone and car, unless your name is Mr. Lamborghini or something, but you would go buy it. But if you want to get into the phone making business, if you want to be the person, for instance, that sells warp drives to the market, then you would build a factory for that. So the difference there is, do you want a factory to make every single thing you could possibly want in the game, like I have set up here? The answer is yes, but the way the industry was intended, it's just not feasible to have it in the game. I love having my Omni factory here, but it's not feasible for how the economy is intended to be in the game for that to continue. So if I want to produce something in large numbers, recoup my investment cost and make money from it, and my video on this warp cell facility is going to be the first industry guide I make post update. And so if I want to make warp cells for profit, I need to invest in that, and then over time I make my investment back and start to make profit. And so that's how the industry is meant to be, not make your own ship parts or whatever parts that you want. You would have to go and buy those from the market, from players that choose to invest in those industry setups. So every part of the market is going to have a niche. You're going to have to find your niche and hope that not too many other people are going to try and fill the same niche, and then try to compete with that. Or with them in making money while keeping your prices competitive. And that's now where the extreme specialization from large corporations with the tier 5 efficiencies and refined materials or alloys or whatever seriously come into play in their profit margins, and to what extent they're able to drive the solo player out of the market there. So the reason I have this industry running here is any recipe running at the point of update will finish its current run and then stop, and from that point on you'll need to put a schematic. And then following on from that thought, people have been stockpiling, have been buying things from markets, and the way JC answered that with regards to a potential wipe is that he said no. He also did say, and I'm quoting directly again, there are a lot of intelligent things that we can do to redistribute things or to restart things in a way that doesn't mean that you start from zero. And then he continues to say, but that's not in the plans. Really, it's not. He's referring there to a wipe. Right now, we want to stick with no wipe, but if the situation becomes obviously problematic, then it's always an option. But then he did say there is a lot of other things that they can do to try and address any kind of imbalance in the economy from the way that it is right now. So all in all, I'm excited about the changes that are coming. I understand that my Omni factory isn't going to be able to work the way it has been. But if you remember in my industry guide, I talked about trickle supply versus sustained supply versus burst supply. So burst supply is out of the window now. I can't suddenly whack down 10 metal workers to make magnets if I want them, because they'll each take a schematic, and if I want to make 10 advanced magnets, that's going to cost a lot of money. Sustained supply is also going to be difficult. For instance, if I want to set up a railgun production line here, I'm going to need to have quite a few metalworks running advanced magnets, and that's going to cost a lot of money. So it's not that I'm going to be able to make my own railguns easily for PvP, but if I choose to build that factory, I go down that route, I can A, make my own railguns to use, and B, sell railguns and ammo to buy all the other items I need. I can't have an Omni factory making all my gunner seats and radars and everything else I need for my PvP ships. I have to have my factory set up to make profit, from which I can then buy everything else. The last part of the equation there is trickle supply, and And that's what I feel I'm going to have to be relying on most here. If you remember, I say want to keep 5,000 hydraulics in reserve at any one time. This is not something that I want to have running all the time. So what's going to happen is, instead of having 3 or 4 metal workers maintaining hydraulics to constantly churn out engines for me, I now need to have schematics for my supply of hydraulics or whatever else to be slowly built up over time. And so by the time I do want to, say, for instance, come and make my own engines, basic Tech 1 engines, I have all of the pre-required things built in my inventory very slowly, basically one industry unit at a time. So gone are the days where you can have multiple assemblers out making everything you want in many different batches. But, for instance, if you want to, say, make an atmospheric military engine large, you would most economical way to have that for personal use would be to have one industry type of everything, making a very small trickle supply of hydraulics, of pipes, of everything else that you need, in order to be able to make much fewer engines, but still be able to make your own engines. Or better still, for instance, if we go with our sustained supply, we can meet our hourly demand of making 232 warp cells in a day, and continue making that every single day and selling those warp cells. And I'm guessing the price of warp cells is going to go up, perhaps not by all that much, but it might go up, given that there is going to be increased difficulty in making them. And then what that'll mean is I can sell those and use that money potentially to buy anything else I need, or what's more likely is I'm going to be using that money for giveaways on streams or whatever. The last thing I want to say about that update in terms of details is Honeycomb. Now, I'm not entirely clear of how that's going to work. It could be one of two things based on what JC said in the interview. It could be that, for instance, lithium has its own schematic, and then all different types of lithium are going to be built by that one schematic. Or it could be that there's going to be different types of lithium. So, for instance, lithium panels, or lithium painted, or base lithium that will each need their own schematics. So you might need 3 schematics for lithium, or you might only need 1. And then each honeycomb material is going to need its own schematic to be made, which makes making honeycomb a little more difficult. But again, this is an area of specialization. If you want to specialize an industrialist to make it efficiently and sell it, then you can make a lot of profit by going into honeycomb building. Or if you're a shipbuilder, you can set up a honeycomb production and then an engine production line and a wing production line, but that cost is going to add up as you add more and more branches into your industry. And so you need to increase the cost of your ships, perhaps. If you sell your ships on DU Creators or somewhere, you're going to have to be able to sell ships to recoup that cost, because it is going to be very expensive if you want to make everything yourself. So, all in all, I feel now there are players in my community that have specifically unsubscribed from the game because their entire game was mining their own ore, and from that ore making their own ship parts and designing and building their own ships. Building is one of the main endgame activities in Dual Universe right now, and so perhaps the Honeycomb factory is a necessity for a lot of players, but a lot of people in my community have already decided that this industry update isn't for them because their preferred playstyle, their preferred activity in the game, the time that they had available to invest was spent in mining ore specifically to build their own ship parts and make their own ships. So there are other ways of doing that. You can, for instance, run an industry to try and make profit with your ore. But the idea of selling ore directly in order to buy ship parts wasn't appealing to them, and they left. There are also other players that are extremely excited about the upcoming changes to industry, given that they're going to be able to hyper specialize, and instead of being completely blown out of the water by larger organizations. They're going to, perhaps in a small group or as a solo group, specialize into one very specific niche and carve out an existence in the industrial landscape of this game and the market landscape of this game. All in all, I'm excited for many reasons, but one of the main ones is I'm gonna have to need to make industry guides again. I don't know how I'm gonna afford to make guides for every different industry that you might want to make, but I'm going to pick a couple of different ones to talk through how you would design your industry setup now and what kind of costs you're looking at. Now, again, JC did say that low tier ore processing, for instance, you're going to be able to do that with your first initial daily login reward, whereas high-end processing here, so for instance Coag alloy or Agli reinforced glass, that's going to cost a lot of money. So for instance, how much would it cost to make this warp cell facility now? I know that I would need to take off this 10th one because it's not necessary. I only have it so that all my lights are green at the same time and it's all symmetrical and lined up. I'm going to have to give that up in order to save 1 unit of schematic costs. So all in all, I'm excited for what's coming tomorrow, but I do hear the people who are worried. And I was there when Warhammer Age of Reckoning servers went down. I was in the Inevitable City on my Blackguard of Nagaron. I remember going back to Star Wars Galaxies after the updates there killed the game, and seeing dead areas where it was once thriving, bustling hub of activity. And, given what MMO players have had to put up with over the years, I see the fear, I see the concern. And I sincerely hope that we will be very pleasantly surprised with the implementation of this update. Because MMO players, especially those of us of a certain age, have had our expectations failed by developers in the past. I am generally very impressed with how NQ is put together. They seem like a competent and fun group of people. I'm going to come and talk about some things that were said specifically about their support system and improvements coming there, but I hear the fear and I recognize it. I recognize it in my own self as well, but I am excited about what's coming. So let's go talk about some other things. First and foremost, tiers. Elements are going to start to have tiers. So basic atmospheric engines aren't only going to be basic atmospheric engines anymore. There's going to be other things. So you can, for instance, trade up between a tier 1 and a tier 5 engine, power for fuel consumption or fuel consumption for power. You're going to have to give up some things and you can improve some things. I remember in Star Wars Galaxies there were player-made markets, player-made malls, basically shopping centers. You knew if you were on Tatooine and you wanted a piece of armor that there was only one place to go to because it was the best quality at the best price, or if you needed a rifle or a power hammer, there was only one place to go to because it had the best supplies. Or if you were a doctor and you needed buff packs or stim packs, there was competition. There were lots of different suppliers vying for power, but people that had set up their industry were able to create centers of player-made activity where we were able to buy the best equipment at the best prices. So with different tiers of elements coming, I'm excited to see what's going to happen there. You can create a niche within industry that serves a particular luxury need, like super high performance, super bad fuel consumption engines, or maybe even the alternative, super high fuel efficiency, super low performance atmospheric engines. But my days, sadly, of sitting upon the throne of enlightenment and looking upon my marvelous creation are at an end. But I'm excited to see what the future holds for industry. So, what are the other updates coming? There are a lot to do with PvP and so on, but let's talk about some of the other ones first. The maneuver tool is going to have its range set to a hard limit of 128 meters. So the maneuver tool was never meant to transport ships or heavy things, for kilometers across the map for those patient enough to use them. So I think what that means is if I want to say fix the way I've parked my little Scorpion pocket rocket here, I can only move it 128 meters away from where it starts. And so if I try to pull it out of that range, it'll kind of rubber band, I suppose, back to where it was, or some other method. So the maneuver tool shouldn't be used as JC outlined to move ships across kilometers, but instead is there to make fine adjustments, or if your ship falls into a hole or something, to be able to lift it back out. And they feel 128 meter radius for movement is plenty to achieve that goal. Another thing there is Alt F4s. We have Alt F forward once or twice in this pyramid ship here, to prevent myself from having to repair every single element aboard. And on one occasion I took the crash and simply repaired everything inside it. It took me ages. But that's now going to be a thing of the past. So for instance, in PvP, if a person Alt F4s in the middle of a fight, the running of their ship is going to transfer to the computer of the other person, keeping it rendered. And so the ship will continue moving forward. So logging off to stop is not going to be a viable tactic anymore. And so, if you want to park your ship in the air, for instance, if you have an anti-gravity generator, I've taken mine off of this ship, perhaps I'll use it on another ship, but you can't just Alt F4 and stay hovering in the air anymore. If you want to hover, you need to power it. Something needs to be consumed in order to keep the matter of that ship levitating up in the air. And so when you Alt F4, the momentum of the ship continues the moment you log back in. So the issue that I see with this is, what if you crash, or what if you lose connection? JC did specifically mention this and said that those instances ought to be rare enough that support tickets should be able to deal with those issues. Now, I have been concerned at the level of support available to the player base. Now, NQ-Naerais did specifically mention that they are scaling up their support team, and we have noticed a lot of new people coming on board there with the community team at Nova Quark, and they are prioritizing game access tickets, so people who are unable to play the game. And Naerais did specifically say, we do hear you, we're working on improving that. And they have given a free month to people of gameplay, that is, to people who were caught up in the issues in the first month of the game. They have specifically said that they are aware of the feedback in the community about the frustration, that they understand the frustration, they understand that their community team, their support staff need more investment, and they are making that investment, it seems, which is something I'm very happy about. And so when JC says the support system should be enough to deal with that, I'm hopeful that with the increased level of support that's going to be the case. And NQ-Naerais did say that they are about 85% through on catching up on the different tickets, and so hopefully that system is going to be in place and working and able to meet the demand that the players are going to place upon it, with ships crashing because of disconnects or game crashes and so on. Talents, there's going to be talent rework, so any talents that are going to be removed or changed. If you notice here, you have talent points to spend. Any points that you invested in any skill, say that is going to go away. I'm not saying this is going to go away. I'm saying, for instance, if this skill was to go away, all of the points invested here would suddenly appear here, and I could reinvest them wherever else we want. We're not going to lose talent training when talents are removed. Another big update coming is to ship selling. So when we make a BP, we can make one-run blueprints. So if we design and get into the industrial setup of selling ships, we can sell people a blueprint and materials with a single run on that blueprint, and once they make the ship, that blueprint is gone. And so the blueprint that you make is safe. No one can then go out and sell your design. So you would load the blueprint and the material into the dispenser, and that is able to be used one time. And speaking of dispensers, we're now going to be able to inspect what it is that we're buying before clicking accept. So for instance, if I go to my in-game donation altar of sacrifice here, And if I stand here before the altar of sacrifice and I get a patch, instead of saying confirm purchase, I will see what's in the batch. So I would see that I get a suspended fruit plant as a blessing from the gods for sacrificing 1,000,000 quanta for Shamsi. So this should hopefully end the scammers being able to scam people out of their daily login reward quanta by people being able to see specifically what it is that they are buying before agreeing to buy it. There's also going to be upgrades to Lua. There's RGB lighting coming, so for my Christmas tree up here I can put RGB lighting up, and there's going to be a lot of different things. There, for instance, tiles here. Any personal tile and any organization tile is going to be colored differently. I'm going to be able to, instead of keeping all my scan results in my inventory and managing that all manually, I'm going to be able to say, if I've scanned a tile, click on a tile, and then the scan results will be there if I set it up. So that's going to be incredibly useful. And the other big thing that's coming is PvP. There's going to be a lot of updates for PvP, and there will be a lot more updates for PvP coming moving forward. The big one is cross-section being added as a factor into the formula used to register the likelihood of a shot hitting rather than just the size of the core. If I quote from JC directly, he says, the size of a construct, that is something you can talk about that makes sense. You can make a small ship with a big core. That doesn't necessarily mean if you've got a large core that you have a large ship. So we need to do something more physically based, and that is the cross-section. So the chance to hit isn't based only on the size of the core, it's also going to be on the size, the cross-sectional size of the ship. And also they are now tying weapon sizes to core sizes. So if you want to use a large weapon, you have to use a large core for that. He also said that this is something that's going to be evolving, that it's something that the fixes currently coming in are only going to be temporary ways of controlling. So it's going to be better how ships work in PvP. And you know, we all know the Boar cubes, Coffee Forevers, PvP antics. A lot of us miss those videos, but yeah, the old Boar cube and the hate towards that in the community, it's extremely efficient. Why would you do anything else? But now, to mitigate that as a temporary fix, these are the changes coming in. Cross section is going to matter, and weapon size is going to be linked to the size of the core. JC also said this is only a step, so they are reducing, for instance, radar scaling on range, so smaller radars will have less range of detecting ships at all. And the real changes for PvP aren't coming until the very next release. What I mean by that is that he said that a lot of other changes are coming in the step after this release, so probably in the release or the one after. He mentioned a lot of very cool stuff are coming for PvP, and that is one of their main priorities. He also mentioned player missions, you know, basic hauling missions, or when PvP is improved, bounty missions, or he did also mention the prospect of bounty missions and hauling missions being used to lure and trap players into ambushes and so on, which is very cool. But those are coming in the next big update. He also mentioned there's going to be energy management coming for PvP. Energy is shared between your weapons, your engines, your everything. So it's a design choice, a tactical design choice. Do you want to put all of your eggs into the weapon basket, or do you want to be highly maneuverable, or etc.? So it's going to be tactical decisions on how you put your PvP ships together. And so he also wants to give the community more reasons to fight for now. He said that when territory warfare comes into the game, that's not really going to be necessary anymore. PvP is going to be very organic. And they have plans for that for 2021. And it's all in the making. When that comes in, you know, emergent civilization building gameplay is going to be there, and players can take part in the way that they like. But for now, he mentioned, for instance, that there are going to be extremely valuable asteroids out in space, and there's going to definitely be PvP around that. He also did mention something very exciting to me, because at this moment in time, solo PvP isn't really a thing in the game. If I want to go shooting, I need to ask my wife to come man the gunner seat for me on my PvP gunner character. but there are going to be solo PvP options in quasi instances. Really, the way he described them is that there are going to be arena type PvP parts of the game. So it's going to be kind of instance. There are PvP ships, there are atmospheric ships, spacefaring ships, and you're going to be, 1v1, 4v4, or whatever. There's going to be arenas in the game in which a solo PvPer is able to get their PvP fix, which I'm, desperately looking for, in the arenas that are going to be coming to the game. He also did mention that bots do want to get rid of market bots. That is the ultimate goal. The intention is for the bots to go, but there is still a need for them for now. And when the market is at the point where they're not needed, they'll be gotten rid of. But he did also say that bots aren't there for people to make a lot of money from selling ore to. The market is meant to be more organic, so I'm guessing that the issues that we've seen with regards to bots and the ability to make a lot of money from them are going to be addressed, hopefully. He also did mention mining. Now, mining should be, according to JC, more challenging than it is the deeper you go. So if you go 2 kilometers underground, it should be a logistical issue of how to get the ore out rather than relying on an extremely long linked container range. He mentioned linked containers were meant to be, for instance, for builders. If I'm building on this causeway here, I don't want to have to constantly go back to a container to pick materials from. It was never meant to be used for miners, and so he wants to create exciting and engaging new ways of miners dealing with logistics. Perhaps drones, he mentioned, following you underground carrying ore, perhaps in certain quantities over time. Currently, a solo player, I've done it, you can clear out a supernode in a matter of hours. That's not the way it was imagined to be. It's too easy, he said. So he linked that to the industry, for instance, that it wasn't meant to be this easy. So they want to create exciting and engaging ways for miners to manage the logistics of getting ore out. Now, we're talking when we get deep underground, that is, the tier 5 ores, the really hard to get ores that are super deep under the ground. So he also did say that there's going to be more ways than mining as a way to make money in the game. Missions are coming. Other ways to make money are coming, he said. So for now, he suggested that players set their own goals. Features are coming to let solo players make money. For now, building is a good activity to get into as a solo player. DU creators or whatever else, if you want to make and sell ships, if you want to do landscaping. For instance, I had someone offer to come and landscape my little landing pad here. They weren't aware that I love how janky it looks, that it's my first piece of landscaping in the game, and even though I have a floating rock here in the middle of the air, I like it and want it to stay. But, decide what you want to do in the game as your niche and get into it. More ways to make money other than mining are coming. He also did mention that org wallets are coming really early in 2021. That with this update, triangle windows, NQ-Naerais asked him when it's coming, and he said they're adding canopies in 0.23. So I'm super excited to work with triangle windows, given that I like to build pyramids. So that covers pretty much everything that I wanted to cover. Until the next time, thank you all for watching, and bye for now.